So, what is this? Well, this is my fuel tee, and it goes from 5/16 to 1/8. If you see this little line right here, this is the fuel line, and this is the rubber connectors you connect to the fuel line. Obviously, you put hose clamps on there. So I have a fuel line, a secondary fuel line that comes off of my pickup. There's two pickups in the fuel tank. One that goes to the engine, goes through its ray cores there, and then another one that goes through a smaller ray core that goes to the generator. After that ray core, I'm going to put this in line, but I don't want to cut the fuel line to the generator until I have all the problems worked out on my hydronic heater, and that's down in here. So let me show you what I've done down there. Hello and welcome, I'm Tim and this is SV Paquita. Come along almost every week, whenever I get a chance to post a video, and follow along as I try to make the transition from being a professional lifelong mariner to cruising a sailboat, mostly offshore, but sometimes in the coastal waters. Right now we're in New England and we're getting ready to go through the Cape Cod Canal and head up towards Maine. Spend the rest of the season in the Gulf of Maine. So come along, strap in, and hope you like it. So in typical Tim fashion, I tried to save a little bit of money by coming up with a water heating solution. Now I have two ways of heating hot water aboard Paquita right now. We have an 11-gallon water tank that has a waste heat loop from the engine. So when you run the engine, the waste heat from the engine goes and circulates into your hot water heater, exactly the same way that you heat your car. You know, there's a right underneath your thermostat, you'll have a 3/4 inch line that goes through a heater core underneath your dash and comes back to the engine on a 5/8 line. And the same exact thing happens on our yacht Mars, but with 5/8 the whole way. And my plan was to buy a diesel hydronic heater that would heat the antifreeze, and by heating the antifreeze, and sending it in line with the engine, it would go and heat the hot water. And so, and then the other way of heating the hot water is you can run the generator, or you can even do it off the inverter, or you can do it if you're plugged into shore. And there's a little electric element in there that you can turn on and heat the hot water that way. Having said all that, I think one of the best solutions would be to simply have a hydronic heater that you would burn diesel fuel and heat it up very quickly, and when you want to take a shower in the morning, you don't have to start the generator and all that sort of stuff. So that's why we do that. So that's the hope anyway. So we're down here in the Port Lazarette, the little area to store things on the left side of the stern of the boat. And as you can see, things are pretty tight in here. I'm pretty cramped in here, and the difficulty of working in here is that the hull is shaped like this, so everything is pushed. You're not sitting or getting on anything that's flat, so it's difficult. So just to give you a little walk around right here, here is my generator is here. This is the vented loop for the generator so that water won't siphon through the exhaust of the generator back in. Highly unlikely anyway, because we have something called a gas water separator, where the gas, the exhaust and the salt water come in here, and they separate out. One goes only exhaust goes out and water comes out the other. And that's really nice in an anchorage. If you've ever been in an anchorage and you hear somebody at night with a generator, you don't usually hear the generator. If it's a marine generator, you usually hear the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of the water spitting out. And because this separates it out, you don't hear anything. It's the water's just shh, and it's very nice that way. But this is the hydronic heater that I put in, and it's a Chinese version. This is a classic Tim mistake. There's about a $2,000 German model that I should have bought, and I wanted to plumb it and try everything out with the $350 Chinese clone. and figuring that if the clone worked really well and everything was great, then at some time everything would be in place for me to buy the expensive German one if I had a problem with the Chinese clone. Well, this little unit here is it's like a little jet engine. There's a computer in here and a fan, and this is the burn chamber. You can see these are my coolant hoses that come in here, and this thing produces 5 kW of heat, which I think is like 17,000 BTU or something like that. But this is the exhaust line going out, and they give you, I have things here just because I'm testing everything. Then this is the air line coming in. They give you a little air filter. That's really to quiet it down. It's not so much to clean the air, I think. But this is coolant in and coolant out. And you can see these go down here to a pump. And if you wonder why things aren't put away and really held tight, it's because we're still in the testing phase. Before I have to take things apart, and believe me, I've taken this system apart 20 times already. One thing that I've added, you can see this T right here, because this is higher than my engine, it was almost impossible to get all the air bubbles out of the system. So I added this, and this just goes, let me see if I can lift this up. This just goes to an extra piece of line that I put up in the air while I'm running it to get all the last bubbles out of the system. And the reason why this happened was that when I first put it in, the system will heat up, and when it heats up, it shuts itself down. It goes into a protection mode. It gets to 80 centigrade, which I think is about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it shuts itself down. So the problem that I'm having right now is a lack of being able to turn the heater down. The heater starts off very slowly and ramps itself up, and the way it works, it heats up glycol, or antifreeze, goes in a line with the engine, where the engine waste heat from the engine goes to heat a loop in the hot water heater. This goes in the way of waste heat. So if you're not running the engine, you're at the anchor, instead of running the generator to make the electrical element go, you can start this up and heat up hot water very quickly. Where I'm running into a problem is that this system is not designed. It's not designed to do what I'm asking it to do. So it's designed that if you were if you were in Alaska or Canada or somewhere and you had a diesel truck, you could have this start up every morning and have it right in line with all the antifreeze in your engine, and as the cooled antifreeze gets warmer, when it got up to 80 degrees, it would automatically shut off. My problem is that the heating element in the heater is 1500 watts, and this is 5,000 watts. Now, I'm not saying that it draws 5,000 watts. It puts out the same heat as a 5,000 watt element. So I don't believe that the transfer rate, or we might call it a delta T, I don't believe that is, I'm not being able to transfer enough heat into the hot water heater. So what that means is that as coolant, which is getting warmer, goes into the hot water heater, it expels some of the heat and comes back, but it's not cold enough. And so as the system goes, it'll go, and I'll show you through about 8 or 10 minutes or whatever, it goes from say 30 degrees Celsius all the way up to 80, and then it shuts itself down. Where in a perfect world, I would keep it at around 70 or 80 degrees, and it would modulate there and give the hot water heater time to expel the heat. And what I really need to do is my friend Lance, who's a professor at Maine Maritime, I got to get with him again. He's been helping me out with a lot of my thermodynamics problems. But if any of you guys know the answer to this, let me know. There's two ways I'm thinking about this. If I can't control the modulation of the heater, is it only because I'm not transferring heat fast enough to the hot water heater? And in that case, there's not a whole lot I can do about it. Or if I add a pump, if this little pump isn't enough, you see this right here? If that little pump isn't enough, then maybe it's not bringing coolant back fast enough to this. Now granted, if this was in a truck the way it was designed to be, there'd be a few feet of hose and then it would go directly into the system. This goes all the way to the engine in the engine room, and then from there all the way up to the water heater. So it's got a lot of pushing to do. So I'm hoping that I can replace it with a bigger pump. The problem is it's a 3-wire pump, and I'm not really sure how to replace that, but it does have some mystery. Look at that. Some writing on there. Mystery relays. Now I gotta get my test meter out, and I got a feeling that when the pump starts going, these are going to fire for bigger, to turn on a bigger pump. If that's the case, if it's a simple on-off with a bigger pump, I'll buy a bigger pump and do it. The problem is that I run into is that I'm not fully convinced, this is where I need you guys that know more about thermodynamics than I do, is just moving more fluid through will cool this unit faster, and by doing that it'll give it less time to trip out. Does that make sense? The other side of that is I'm under the assumption that as you speed up the coolant moving through the system, it'll have less time to dissipate its heat in the hot water heater. So if any of you know anything about that, please write in the comments, let me know, or send me an email. You guys know, timb@gmail.com. Anyway, that's that. It comes with a little controller, and it even has a little antenna. Once again, none of this is permanently mounted because I don't want to mount anything until it works right. But I can show you what happens here. If I turn this on now, it gives the time, and then if I hold it in for 3 seconds, that little antenna is, so now it's going to start. You can hear the circulating pump is going, and saying 29, 28 degrees, and I'm assuming that's because it's pulling colder coolant through, or different temperature coolant through. Now it's going to 31, up through here, in here, and then out the other one. Now this thing will start to fire off here, and you'll see it. It's going to really start, when it starts really going, it really goes. And this is the fuel line right here. And I don't, like I say, I don't want to cut into my fuel line for the Raycor for the generator until I'm confident that the system works well. I don't need to have two systems that are out of commission. Right now I have one system out, and I have the fuel pump here. The fuel pump has to be at an angle so the air bubbles go on, and all that's working well. It's firing fine. I really think that this is the problem, or another, the problem is that I'm not dissipating the heat enough. So I've been also thinking, while this thing is going through its warm-up cycle, and you can see how this all works, another thing that I've been thinking of is, had I put a bus heater, meaning a radiator with a little fan on it, downstream, like on the cold or the return side of the hot water heater, that's something that I want to do in the future, so that if I'm up in Maine and it's cold, we can have hot air, warm the cabin, the salon. It would require us heating up the hot water first, because obviously the water, any energy that goes into the hot water heater is not going to be energy that's going to go into the bus heater. But having said that, and knowing what I know now, we need to get more heat out of the system. Now you can see it's starting to ramp up. You're hearing the noise increase. It's at 32 degrees centigrade. But the problem with putting that heater in, if that's the fix that I have, that means that, oh, now you can hear it's fired off. You can hear, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it's getting faster and faster and faster, and you're going to see this temperature start to rise. This is the return right here. So it's only 33 degrees, so I'm not really feeling any heat yet. But that was my plan for putting a bus heater in there. The problem with that is that when I'm in the tropics, the last thing I want to do is introduce more heat into the salon. So I'm really hoping that I can find a workaround for all of this. But now it's starting to take off faster. Now you can hear it's really taking off, and we're still at 34 degrees, and so everything's going good. The pump is pumping. The hot water is not coming out hot yet because it's only 35 degrees. And the little trick I use, I'm sure some of you guys know this, it's not 100%, but a short rule of thumb is if you double it and add 20, you pretty much kind of close get to regular temperature. So if this is 40, 80, and then 20, 40 degrees should be about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Does that make sense? You double the Celsius and then add 20. I don't know, something like that. But okay, now you can see this number is getting higher and higher as the engine. Now, if the heater stayed like this, I'd be really happy. But I think it's even going to go faster. Any of you that are concerned about the hot exhaust going out of through the transom here, this is actually a stainless steel double walled with there's a pipe within a pipe and an air gap in between it, just so that it won't burn the transom. And because I wanted to mount this so that I could take it off and put another one on, I epoxied a piece of starboard with screws with stainless steel bolts already in them to the, I ground all the paint off and epoxy that to there so that I wouldn't have to have the bolts going through the transom. These right here have bolts. When they put this in, they didn't do that. They bolted it right through the transom. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so we're up to 48 degrees, 49 degrees Celsius right now. Things moving right along. Okay, I'm starting to feel on the return some heat, and when I feel the other one, the output is warmer, but I would say, if I'm guessing, I'd say maybe 10 to 20 degrees difference Fahrenheit, but it's definitely circulating, and like I say, I'm very confident that I've got all the air out of this, because I've been in and out of the system 100 times getting every last bubble out of this. I've been fighting with the Chinese tech support through Google Translate, and that's been a joy. But they keep saying, nope, if there's antifreeze in it, it won't overheat. But I don't think they're understanding. What I'm asking is there a way we can modulate this to turn it down once it hits its target? So now we're at 55 degrees, 56 degrees. It's getting closer and closer to 80. All the time it's transferring heat to the hot water heater. But right here, if it's at 50 degrees, that's 120 degrees. Your target temperature in the water is 100, so you'd have no delta T at all there, meaning the differential between the temperature of the coolant versus the potable water. The higher that number is, the faster your transfer will be. Okay, now we're at 60 degrees, and already my leg is starting to cramp up down here. Like I say, sitting at an angle is the thing that hurts the most about being down here. Okay, we're at 61 degrees, and I guess it's going as fast as it goes. So it would be wonderful if I made all this and talked out my butt and it just ran perfectly until the whole thing heated up. That would be great, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. 63 degrees and counting, so we're getting closer and closer to the 80-degree shut-off. Now, if you wonder what all this is, this area is usually full with dock lines and water hoses and cleaning equipment and snubbers and all that sort of stuff. I've had to pull everything out of here and put it in the other one so that I could work here but still keep the cockpit clean, because we have Chrysalida and 5 of her family over with us right now. Okay, now I'm feeling the return. The return is very hot. And ooh, it's not as hot as the water going out. The water going out is very hot. Well, it's 69 degrees centigrade. So we're within 11 of it shutting down. There's 70. Now this is, if I would hear this motor start slowing down now, I would be tickled pink. Unfortunately, it's going to run full blast right until it trips out, and therein lies the problem. So like I say, I still have to test with this, and that shouldn't be too hard a test, but I really believe these, like I said, there was no documentation with this. That's what happens when you don't spend the big money. But I'm really hoping that these will click in and out for operating a bigger pump, and hopefully a bigger pump will solve the problem. But I don't know that it will. Okay, 74 degrees. Now we've got, the return is almost too hot to touch right now. Very, very, very hot, and that's a good sign. Well, it would be a better sign if the return was returning very cold because it was giving up all its heat. There is a possibility, and some of you might point this out in the comments, but over the life, I don't know how old the hot water heater is. I'm very confident that it's not the original hot water. I don't know of any 22-year-old water heaters out there, but it's very possible that over the life of the water heater, the heating element has calcified stuff around it, minimizing the heat transfer. And some of you might say, well, why don't you just make a on-demand hot water heater? Well, I'd love to do that too, but I already have the problem. Okay, now we're at 80, Okay, now it just started flashing, so now you can hear it's shutting itself down. So now it's in its cool down cycle, and in a perfect world, it would shut down, keep pumping, and transferring heat, and then when it got cold, it would relight again. But it doesn't do that. And I think and you can get into the settings in here, and there are some codes that you can change. And in communicating with tech support, I've written to them twice, and I've gotten very quick responses for going around the world. I gotta give them credit on that. They have been responding, but unfortunately, I think that because of the language barrier, they don't understand really what I'm trying to tell them. Either that, or they're trying to tell me that the system will not do what it says. They just say, yeah, it's got to have antifreeze. Yeah, well, it has antifreeze. You know, is there a way that I can keep it? You know, oh, now you see that? Where it just speeds up just a little bit. Every time it does that, I always get excited, like it's relighting itself and things are going to be good, but it won't. It's going to shut down. As long as that thing is flashing, it's going to go. It's in its cool down mode. Now I can feel the motor is still running and everything is still really hot, so it's still transferring a lot of fluid, which is a lot of heat. But as long as it's really hot coming back, it's not transferring a lot of heat into the water heater. So that's my problem that I have. So it should shut off here at any moment. And that's my thing. So I think that even if I invest in buying a bigger pump to transfer more cold water back. See, right now this is so hot. This is probably almost 80 degrees centigrade coming back to it anyway. And if the return is 80, then it's not going to help. I need to expel the heat faster, like a hot water heater that transfers the heat more, or I need to figure out how to get in the settings to turn this down so that it'll get it to say 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and then shut off, and then relight itself again. You know, modulate it so that it stays under the 180 degrees. So that's what I'm thinking. So it's just about ready to go. This video is getting too long, but those are the troubles of woe that I'm having now. So anything you guys got, any advice you have, especially any of you thermodynamics guys out there, let me know what you think I should do. Thanks.